How's it going, everybody? My name is Nazi Patty, and today we are checking out a video by History Leaks. This video is called How Dagestan Became a Land of Fighters. So you already know we're about to get our MMA discussion on. Another one of my tisms, my obsessions, just like the dinosaurs and filmmaking, I guess. But I'm excited for this one just because I like a lot of the Dagestani and Caucasus region fighters. And I think I have a pretty good idea of what makes them good fighters. Their high altitude gives them good lung stamina, condition and stamina, stuff like that. They were born in a tough region, very war riddled, and a lot of struggles, and that's going to breed tough people. You know what I mean? Tough times make tough people. Not only that, but a lot of them, fight culture is very ingrained into their culture, and they've been fighting and training and sparring since they could walk, pretty much. So all those combined, that makes you a pretty deadly fighter. But anyways, like I said, I'm not sure if I said this already, but link to the original video will be down in the description below. Make sure you go show your love to them. And without further ado, let's get into this.
Mountain region of southern Russia, a tiny republic quietly became one of the most dominant forces in combat sports. Dagestan, a place most people couldn't find on a map, has produced a staggering number of elite fighters, given its small population. You've heard the names Khabib Nurmagomedov, maybe even Islam Makhachev, but there are countless other Dagestani fighters competing in wrestling, boxing, and MMA around the world at the very highest level. But how does this small, rural, and isolated region of just 3 million people produce not one, not two, but 3 UFC champions, including 2 current title holders? What is it that makes Dagestan so overrepresented in combat?
Not to mention, Islam is considered the GOAT. He has most people, I feel like, or at least a large majority of MMA and UFC fans. Like, he's their GOAT, you know what I mean? So, I'd say that's a pretty good sign of their region.
Combat sports. To understand that, we need to look at the region's history and environment, which was shaped by centuries of conflict with some of the world's most powerful empires, like the Persians, Ottomans, Mongols, and Russians. They all left their mark on Dagestan, but never fully conquered them. Dagestan sits at the crossroads of Eastern Europe and West.
Damn, I didn't know that. I thought, they was really just them in Russia, but the Ottoman Empire, the Mongolians, sheesh. They really were, they got a shitty hand.
Western Asia, northeast of the Caucasus Mountain Range, a rugged land with high mountains, rough hills, and unnavigable rivers running through steep valleys, making it very difficult for travel and communication. As a result, trade was always impeded and communities developed in isolation, each with its own language, customs, and identity. The very name Dagestan comes from the Turkish word dag, meaning mountain, and the Persian suffix stan, meaning land, so it literally translates to mountain land. The name that the 10th century Arab geographer al-Masudi gave to Dagestan and the Caucasus region in general was Jabal al-Alsun, meaning the mountain of tongues, communicating another essential feature of Dagestan, its extraordinary ethnic and linguistic diversity. Even today, Dagestan is one of the most linguistically diverse.
Holy hell. 40 ethnic slash or ethno-linguistic groups. So is that like 45 different languages completely?
Diverse places in the world, with dozens of languages spoken from village to village. Russian remains the lingua franca in the major cities, but in the mountains, local languages and dialects are still kept alive. The terrain also shaped the people physically. Many Dagestanis live at high altitude.
Yo, how many of y'all swinging from this, huh? Right on this cliffside. You lose your grip, you go flying backwards off that mountain range, right then and there. Try to jump out forward, miss your balance, slip, roll off the side. That's crazy. Yo. Like that looks exciting. That looks cool. Crazy view. But I'd be shitting bricks the whole time, bro. My butthole would be clenched, man.
Like in the village of Sildi, Khabib Nurmagomedov's hometown, nearly 2,000 meters above sea level. Living in such a low oxygen environment naturally improves lung capacity and endurance over generations, giving the people from this region who grow up in this high altitude environment a physiological edge when it comes to combat sports. And wrestling has always played a significant role in the lives of the people of Dagestan. Men from the area have stated that they've always wrestled in traditional bouts between mountain villages. It's worth noting that other parts of the Caucasus, like Georgia, Armenia, Azerbaijan, Ossetia, and Chechnya, also have really strong wrestling cultures. But even among them, Dagestan stands out. The location of Dagestan in the Caucasus region means it sits at a fault line between major empires, and the threat of war and invasion was persistent throughout history, and therefore an attitude towards fighting was always needed. Life in the mountains was hard. Its difficult terrain and linguistic diversity impeded the formation of any kind of central authority. There were no sheriffs or police to guarantee life or property, so every village had to guarantee its own security. Men were expected to fight and to defend their
It's like a bunch of like towns and villages all separated, right? And they're not connected in any way to the point like the only reason why they have some form of connection is because they are all inside of the country Dagestan. But that really doesn't matter because they're so isolated from each other. Like, does that make any sense? Like, it's almost kind of how there's certain borders in Africa that were made by, white colonialists and people like that, the Europeans, that made no sense because it completely fucked with the way tribes were established, African tribes were.
families and clans. A man who couldn't contribute to the defense of his community held little value. Honor and reputation mattered, not for ego, but for deterrence. This is the world that shaped Dagestan's fighters, not in gyms, but in the mountains. In ancient times, the region that's now known as Dagestan wasn't isolated from the rest of the world. It was part of a much larger network of trade, migration, and conflict. Nomadic groups from the Eurasian steppe, including early Scythians and other Asiatic Turkic tribes, regularly interacted with the peoples of the Caucasus. Sometimes through trade, other times through raiding and warfare. You can still see the legacy of these early interactions in some of Dagestan's modern ethnic groups. For example, the Nogai and Tabasaran peoples reflect clear cultural and linguistic ties to these early steppe nomads. By the 5th century AD, small statelets began to emerge in Dagestan, usually formed along ethnic lines. Among the most notable were the Laks, Kumiks, and Tabasarians, all of whom still exist as distinct ethnic groups today. Current lightweight UFC champion Islam Makhachev, for example, is an ethnic Lak. At this time, the region also came under the influence of the Sassanid Empire, the last great Persian empire. The Persians extended their control into the southern Caucasus in the 5th and 6th centuries, bringing with them Persian culture, architecture, and a military presence. One major sign of their influence was the construction of Derbent, a massive fortress city built to defend against northern invasions, particularly from the Khazar Khaganate, which began moving into the region in 552 AD. The name Derbent comes from Persian and means barred gate, fitting for a city designed to block nomadic incursions through the narrow mountain pass between the Caspian Sea and the Caucasus. Today, Derbent is the southernmost city in Russia and still home to the ancient Sassanid walls that have survived for nearly 1,500 years. In the 7th century, the Arab Rashidun Caliphate began its rapid expansion, defeating the Sassanid Empire and pushing into the Caucasus. This brought them into conflict with the Khazars, the powerful steppe empire controlling the northern region. The result was a split. The Arabs held the south, including Derbent, and the Khazars held the north. But in the
I know I've been quiet for a little bit, and I'm kind of letting the video play out. I know some of you guys are appreciative of that, some of you guys are kind of bored with that. But it's mostly just because this is really interesting. You don't learn about, as an American, unfortunately, we don't learn a lot about all the world history because there's so much history in the world that you could spend your entire life studying and learning about it and still die missing knowledge, with missing knowledge, not knowing everything when it comes to history and the world and how things formed. But it's really cool just to see how much like crazy shit and how much stuff happened to this little area right here or whatever, and how it all influenced and like came like almost like a domino effect of creating these elite fighters and warriors.
The highlands of Dagestan, a Christian mountain kingdom called Sarir survived for centuries. Sarir was important because it served as a buffer between the advancing Muslim powers and the Christian Byzantine Empire. In fact, Sarir had close ties with Byzantium, which supported it politically and militarily. Although it later declined in the 12th century, remnants of that era still survive in the ruins and ancient churches hidden in the mountains, many of which have yet to be fully excavated or studied. In 1235, the Mongols invaded the Caucasus, crushing kingdoms like Georgia and weakening Christian power across the region. But in Dagestan, they didn't resist the Mongols and had kind of an alliance with them, paying
Bro, Mongolian throat singing is so fucking scary. It's so intimidating, bro.
tribute to the Khan, so the Mongols let them govern themselves.
Bro, the Mongols are so fucking cool, guys. Like, I don't know if y'all understand, man. They were found with like a muscle or something, still like a mummified pretty much to their back from them using, from them drawing bows and shit because of how much they did and how strong they were and shit like that. And like the muscle was so thick or whatever that it mummified. That's insane. The only reason why Japan is still around and isn't taken over by the Mongols and shit is not because they fought them off. It's because two tsunamis or whatever destroyed them both times. Mongols tried to go to Japan twice. Both times, somehow tsunamis came in and wiped out their fleets. And even still, then, the fear and panic alone of the Mongols coming into Japan sent them into a civil war pretty much to the point where they had to reconstruct their entire society.
This allowed new local forces to rise. In the mountains of Dagestan, it
I'm sorry, that was like a out of nowhere rant, but I think the Mongols are so cool. Like, I really need to learn more about them because that shit is just so epic. Like, it's insane how much, like, bro, obviously what they did wasn't good, and it's mostly, Genghis Khan and shit like that, who's the one that led that all. But history is history. That is one hell of a, like, he accomplished a lot.
was the Avars who stepped into that role. Over time, they established the Avar Khanate, which would dominate the region for centuries and play a key role in Dagestan's gradual shift to Islam. Even today, the Avars are still the largest ethnic group in Dagestan, making up 30% of its population, and many of the region's most famous people, including Khabib and Magomed Angalayev, are Avar. Also,
Alright, so real quick, the reason why I just jumped all like that is real quick. In the comment section below, the guy who made this video basically said that it was copyrighted due to some of the fight footage, so he just had to basically cut it out. But I'm sure we all knew what was being said there. Just wanted to explain it real quick. Nothing happened in the video you're watching, like on my video. It was end. It's the original video. So let's just keep going.
one of the most important figures in Dagestani history, Imam Shamil, was an Avar. He's often seen as the father of modern Dagestan, but we'll come back to him later. Interestingly though, Avar or Avar, it wasn't what they called themselves. It was a name given to them by outsiders. In their language, they called themselves Magarulal, which means mountain people or highlanders. The term Avars led to some confusion with the Pannonian Avars, nomadic warriors who invaded the Roman Empire and settled the steppe of Hungary in the 6th century AD. The link between the two groups is still unclear. Some historians used to think they were connected, but modern genetic studies disprove this. The Pannonian Avars had Central Asian roots, likely Mongolic or Turkic, whereas the Avars of Dagestan are indigenous to the Caucasus with genetic markers closer to local European and Caucasian populations. By the 15th century, the Mongols were gone, and Dagestan became a contested ground between two rising Islamic powers, the Ottoman Empire and the Safavid Persian Empire. But neither could fully control the mountainous interior. The terrain was too rugged and the highland clans were too independent. Many areas remained self-governed under local khans, elders, or religious leaders. By the mid-18th century, a third power entered the struggle, the Russian Empire. They wanted to fully absorb the Caucasus.
So by this time, right, I'm assuming all this that Dagestan hasn't existed and it's just been this like free for all. And these poor people who are stuck here or choose to live here in their tiny little clans, defending it by themselves, are constantly just getting attacked and harassed by all these other countries and empires that want their land. For what reason? I'm not exactly sure if it's all like I'm assuming because it's like a connection point or something like that because this is all crazy mountains right here and shit like that. Not a lot of farmland and just doesn't look that profitable or like useful, but I don't know.
Region into their expanding empire. And this would trigger one of the most intense resistance movements in Russian history. At the center of it was Imam Shamil, an Avar from the mountains. In 1834, he united his clans and declared the Imamate of the Caucasus, a sort of Islamic mountain republic. He combined guerrilla warfare, his deep knowledge of the terrain and land, and strong religious leadership to resist the Russian advances for over 25 years. And on top
Holy
of that, this
ginger.
was not
Holy ginger beard, man. That's impressive. Hold on, let me see that.
for over 25 years.
Damn. He looked like the lumberjack, like the crazy lumberjack from American Dad. I'm not even gonna lie. This guy right here, he looks like this guy right here, Buckle from American Dad. That's exactly who this guy looks like. Yeah.
And on top of that, this was not too long after the Napoleonic Wars, so he was resisting the army that defeated Napoleon. His fighters, many of them were young men from villages, just like Khabib's. They used hidden run tactics, ambushes, and fortified mountain positions to hold back one of the largest armies in the world. Despite being outnumbered and outgunned, they made Russia's expansion into the region a very slow and painful process. It even made world news headlines of the time, and Imam Shamil was shown on the front page of newspapers in London and New York. The Russians finally captured Imam Shamil in 1859, and although Russia eventually conquered the Caucasus region from coast to coast, Imam Shamil still earned deep respect, even from his enemies. Tsar Alexander II openly admired his resistance, and later in life, the Russian authorities granted Imam Shamil permission to perform the Hajj pilgrimage, and he would later die in Medina. After the conquest of the North Caucasus, Russian military officers saw the potential of the Highlanders in the army. Eventually, they established the Savage Division for North Caucasians. This was based on the notion the Highlanders were uncivilized and fearsome. Many North Caucasians were not averse to serving in the Russian.
Yeah, let me just clear something up real quick. To all the white people, listen up. You're not Caucasian. You're not. Unless you are from the Caucasus region, okay? Do not call yourself Caucasian. You are fucking white. Alright? Either you say you're white or whatever specific denomination you want to say, Irish, Italian, Greek, whatever the case is. You know what I mean? Well, it's just stupid hearing people say Caucasian for white people when they're not Caucasian, they're fucking white. All right? It's literally I saw a joke the other day and it had something to do with like the alphabet. So instead of being like all the way in the back, like W, they're like, you know what? I'm gonna steal Caucasian. Fuck you. Pretty much, right? Anyways, I don't know where I was going with that.
Russian army because for them to bear arms was honorable. Who it was for, that was less important. So Dagestan was incorporated into the Russian Empire and started to become more influenced by the Russian world. And in the 1920s, after further bloody wars, it would later become a part of the Soviet Union. In Soviet times, Dagestan's mountain villages were given more infrastructure and centralized authority. But the region's harsh terrain meant traditional life still continued in much of the highlands. One Soviet policy, though, made a lasting mark: sport. Wrestling, sambo, and judo were institutionalized, becoming tools of national pride. In Dagestan, the Soviets found an endless pool of talented young kids to turn into future Olympic gold medalists. Life there already built physical toughness in them, so they naturally excelled in sports like wrestling, sambo, and weightlifting. And by the late Soviet era, Dagestan had built a reputation in all of these disciplines. After the USSR collapsed, most of the country's sports systems crumbled with it. But Dagestan's wrestling and sambo schools endured. Without many economic opportunities,
Cause that's because they got that dog in them, man.
combat sports became the way out of poverty for many young kids. MMA was a natural and easy transition for them to make from their traditional martial arts backgrounds. Dagestani fighters like Khabib aren't just elite athletes. They're the final product of centuries of hardship and conflict. Even Khabib himself knows this. That's why the nickname he chose was the Eagle, the symbol of Dagestan. He owes everything to the place of his forebears.
I always wondered that. So, is that their national animal? Like America, we have the bald eagle. Do they also have an eagle? Cause that's pretty sick.
And once he showed the world what Dagestani fighters were capable of, the floodgates opened. As he continued to train with the same intensity and focus.
I would say Khabib walked, so every one of them else could run. Like I know not a lot of them have lived up to the hype on the same level, despite them all having pretty good records and all this other shit. Like Khabib, man, that shot that dropped Connor. Oh my God, that was such a great moment in UFC history. And Islam coming in shortly after you, Khabib pretty much taking over and dominating the way he has, and all these other fighters. I know Umar's not so much into or that crazy anymore, I guess, but um, I know Ankalaev and shit like that. There's a lot of fighters from these Caucasus regions and Dagestan who, especially who train with Khabib, and it's just they're so dominant, man.
Their reign at the top of MMA is likely to endure for years to come.
Hell
Thank you for
yeah, man. Hell yeah. That was a great video, man. I'm definitely gonna leave a like on that. Man, if you enjoyed this video, let me know down in the comment section below, man. What do you think? If you do agree with me or in these opinions, like this is, I mean, this is pretty much the only reasons why, the way the culture is because of all the war and hard times and the high altitude, along with just the training wrestling from a life, for since they were babies, pretty much. But yeah, man, leave a comment, like, subscribe, do all that good shit, man. Show some love to the original video creator, History Leaks. His video will be down in the description below. With all that being said, man, I hope to see you guys in another video. Stay safe, stay snazzy, stay blessed.